Well, good afternoon, my dear friends. Welcome, welcome, welcome to our Growing a More Human Community webinar. This is our third in a series of three. I love these books, Growing Me, Becoming a Child. That was the first one. The second one was Growing Us, Becoming an Adult. And today we're going to put some icing on the cake with Growing a More Human Community, Growing We the People, this senior elder maturity. It's a great book. And so today we have Dr. Jim Wilder with us. Hello, Dr. Wilder.
Good to be with you and being completing this series here, all about growing up.
Yes, yes. For those of you who are not familiar, maybe you're not familiar with how Life Model Works, but this is Dr. James Wilder. He has a PhD in clinical psychology, a master's in theology, and he is our resident neurotheologian here at Life Model Works. He's authored over 20 books, over 30 books. Can you count?
20,
Over
20.
20?
Yeah.
Okay, 20 and counting. And,
Mhm.
uh, and of course, he is the author of this great trilogy that we are presenting during this webinar. But also joining us will be two other panelists to join Dr. Wilder as we have other reviewers on today. And so we will have Bishop Bill Atwood on with us. And Bishop Atwood is an American bishop of the International Diocese in the Anglican Church in North America. And I love that he wrote the book, The General, the Boy, and Recapturing Joy, which many
Mhm.
of us had to read when we did our Thrive training. So Bishop Bill, would you show your face and give greetings to the people?
Yeah, it's really great to be here. This pursuit of relational brain science has been very transforming for me and my family, as well as the churches that I've worked with over the years. So I'm really excited that we're able um, to do this today and hopefully expand the circle of joy a bit.
Good. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us. Stay with us right there as we introduce our other panelist is Barbara Moon. She is an author, a teacher, a trainer, a mentor. She's a mom and a grandmother, and the list goes on. She has authored several books. Her latest is Becoming a Joy-Filled Woman. And so, Barbara, thank you for joining us.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here, honored to be here, and I love this topic. So can't wait to see what the other people have to say about it.
So good, good. Thank you both so much. And so now we're going to hand it over to Dr. Wilder to just kind of talk to the audience a little bit about this third book and what he wanted us to capture. So Barbara and Bishop, I'll see you back in just a little bit. I'll have you back on in just a little bit.
Yeah, well, this third book is the one that's most revised. That's the part that I've changed the most from when I wrote this book 25 years ago. Then I was about 50 years old and I was looking around me to find out how you grew up and interviewing a lot of people, but now I went and got old myself, so I've got that whole additional level of experience, and I got to see how a number of the people that I was looking at ended well and others didn't end so well. So there's that accumulated experience as well. And then just to see how much um, life has changed in the meanwhile. So we're having to face a new situation in the world where relationships are often over the internet, as we're looking at right here. And so the demands of getting older um, have sort of increased because we're building communities, but under a whole new set of circumstances that didn't exist when our mentors were around. So this is going to be a very interesting conversation here today. I'm really looking forward to it.
Good. And I understand there are people who are mentioned in the book. And so in the original book, who are with us today. So we have some people with some longevity in this
Hmm.
conversation. So good. All right. And we'll let you guys in on that in just a little bit when we introduce them. Well, I want us to get started because this is a great topic that is so needed in our churches of understanding elders and what is needed and what their positions are and how to invite them into the different spaces. Very needed. And as we're going to hear from some of the panelists that are with us, guys, they are making the observation of just the what happens when we don't have elders in communities. And so I'm going to go ahead and And Bishop Bill, we're gonna get started here. I'm gonna let you come on and I love your review because your review is just comparing about what we're seeing in the world around us, that the church is becoming more and more like the world. But then you pointed out that the missing component were the elders. And so I'm just gonna give you the floor for a minute and let you interact with Dr. Wilder because as we talked this week, you had some great insights. And so just tell us when you read this third book. What is it that was striking you as you were reading?
Well, the setting into which this book is speaking is a pretty scary one, and that is the abject failure of the church in discipleship. That's a pretty stark statement, but my evidence would be that we've lost the culture. The culture is not looking to the church for answers. It's not listening to our voice. And the reason for that, I think, is that we've been pursuing the wrong mechanism of discipleship. For the last 150 years, we've been saying that information brings transformation. So our discipleship programs are geared to give people information. The problem is it doesn't work. Information, I mean, everybody knows that a bacon cheeseburger is not as healthy as a salad, but there are untold millions of bacon cheeseburgers that get consumed every day. So what's missing, and I just think it's quite remarkable that that Jim Wilder has received the download of the two components that we need to embrace in order to have effective transforming discipleship. One of those is relational discipleship pursuit, and the second one is the intentional pursuit of earned maturity. And when you look at the three books, I think all three are good, but the most missing element, I think, is this role of eldership. Now, we have people who are named elders and are in that position, but there's no process of getting people to pursue earned maturity, and there are no benchmarks that are used to select who's going to be named as an elder in a body. The real heart and soul for me that unlocks this was on page 55, page 9 of the something else on 55 of the book, where it says elders contribute 5 elements. And I also think this is interesting. It's different from other books, and even different from other books that you've done, Jim, in that these are observations and declarative statements rather than academic references of saying, well, Kurt Thompson says this, or Carl Lehman says that, or Daniel Eben says this. But the 5 functions, the things that the elders bring, one is to give some guardrails. We don't do this here. What you're doing, we don't do here. So maintaining a relational connection, but saying that's a line we shouldn't be crossing. The second one is to speak possibility into the community, and for the elder to speak to the community and say, we're good together. We're better together than we can be individually. That's really calling community to life. Also, because in this world we have tribulation, one of the helpful things is to remember that attachments, healthy attachments, are enduring. That when people have secure attachment, they can weather horrific, horrible circumstances and stay linked together in a community. And I really think that the mistaken idea that people have is that the kingdom advances by people getting things right is not correct. But what's a better way to say it is the kingdom advances when we approach and bring healing to the mistakes we've made and the wounds that we've inflicted on each other. And that is a real testimony to the enduring attachments. The fourth element, embodied by elders, is that we transcend. Just read this. Whether we rule or are oppressed, we are seen by heaven and recognized as more than what other humans see in us. Elders improve God's sight. That God's sight is being able to speak into the lives of people the truth from God's perspective. And it doesn't mean that I get confused and I think I'm God. But if you look at the way Jesus speaks to people and calls them to life, elders can do that as like a parent to a whole community. And then the fifth element inherent in elders is knowing when we are or are not reliable. I had one of my leaders' meetings, it's been some time ago now, but I raised the standing committee meeting saying, hey, today, let's look at our agenda a little differently. Today, let's talk about things the bishop doesn't do well. And I didn't know exactly what would happen. It worked out great because as people were processing, they began to ask questions about how can we be more healthily a community. So, Jim, I think this is a remarkable trilogy. I love the way that you've been able to put in more stories and present things in a way that gives a better look from different directions of how we should look at this topic. And I think it is a tremendous contribution. And if the church would only embrace it, we would be a lot better off. So, Jim, let me toss this question to you. I wonder what you would say of the similarities and the differences between the way an elder functions in the community and the way maturing parents in a healthy family operate. What's the same and what's different?
Well, I would say that, obviously the parents are still learning to integrate all the elements of the community and, they're, trying to do a lot of things at once. So it's really on the learning end of things. But the elders are, and they're doing a lot of work. The elders are not doing so much of the work. They're encouraging people to remember what they are. They're just, they haven't got the energy that younger people do, but they've got the wisdom. And so they're sort of the free agents of joy and the free agents of identity that are able to come in and say, you actually don't have to answer to me, but let me remind you who we are. And I just want to let you know that I'm glad to be with you. That sort of, that freedom that people have to talk to their grandparents that they don't have with their parents. It's that sort of the same way with the elders. And, if you get the parents and the younger people doing it too soon, and you offered one time to tell me as many stories about trying to be an elder too soon as I could put in any, bunch of books I might write. You find that people are trying to push and get results when they're younger. The elders are able to give that space in which we say, well, let me just share something with you for you to think about and grow into. And so there's sort of an extra degree of freedom that comes with, the elder position, I think.
Yeah, that's great. When the eldership is working properly, it kind of reminds me of Ezekiel in the Valley of Dry Bones. And, Ezekiel is prophesying declarations over these dry bones, and then they rattle together and they form and so on. And eventually they're standing up and they're alive. And the same kind of thing can happen in a community where there's a healthy proclamation to people about, hey, this is who you really are. This is who we are. And our life together can be really terrific.
Yes, it's very edifying, which, is a word that means we're building something that didn't exist before. We're seeing things that aren't as though they were, and allowing God to bring that new life in, which is actually what transforms us.
Yeah,
So good.
absolutely.
Good. Well, thank you, Bishop Bill. And guys, I hope you had your books nearby. You will hear some of the reviewers point to different pages. I quickly opened my book to page 9 when he mentioned it, and already I write in my book, so I some of the notes, but feel free to have your books handy. There he goes. It's
He's
pretty
spiral bound his so he can flip the pages
Oh,
fast.
I love that. I love that. So Bishop Bill, thank you, thank you, thank you. And we'll hear more from you as the other reviewers come on. So Barbara, I'm going to invite you on. Barbara Moon. She's been around the Life Model and Jim Wilder for many years. And so Barbara, thank you for sharing with us this afternoon. What do you want the people to remember or see in this book? And what did you read that was so impressive?
Well, I picked out some of my favorite chapters, and listening to Bishop Bill, I'm in the trenches. I'm not in the leadership like of a church or anything, so I'm in the trenches. And I noticed a couple of places where, for example, Jim says that the elders know that people are not going, that we can't fix them with our love. And so I've been kind of pondering that and going, okay, that's a big thing for me, is to loving like Jesus, which is part of the Life Model motto. And so kind of getting that feel about the difference in anybody thinking that they can love somebody and fix them versus we want to love them to where our love affects them. And so that's a little bit of that is in chapter 10. And I'm just really big on that our love can affect them. We may not fix them, but we want them to feel like they're welcome. Because I have small groups and also one-on-one with people. And I came up with just different things that the elders do or don't do. One was that elders don't give up. They keep giving second chances. But then on the other hand, and this is in chapter 8, I think, that we stay involved but we know how to let go. And sometimes we do have to let go. And I have even had to ask people to not come back, which is very difficult. But the love didn't change, but it just had to be that way. And I especially have noticed about how the elder needs lots of forgiveness for their mistakes as they come along, a lot of grace, and that it's a very long, slow process. And as I read the book and I look back on when I first started doing ministry, it was probably a little bit too soon. But I've also seen that, like we say, the young people are the ones with the energy, and they're the ones usually that are the youth pastors, and most of the time they're the pastors. But they are elders too soon sometimes. So hopefully my children didn't get too damaged. Probably Jim that's on here probably had less because he was older, but the younger one we're not so sure about. And then I think for me, remembering to stay calm and to be calm, it's a calming presence is very important for the elders. And I just want to say quickly that I would be happy to get a room full of adults. And because the people I work with are all different levels. And we do have some infants in our groups, probably a lot of infants. And Jim says that infants don't need to be in a small group. But obviously they were already there before I knew that. But we do a lot of one-on-one with each other. And so I think it gets offset. Plus, they're not intimidated in group. It's okay if they don't say anything. It's okay if they mess up. So those are two things that I kind of, are looking a little bit differently at. One of the places that I noted a good summary is on page 145, and it's kind of on the negative, but it gives the positive. It's down at the bottom of the page. This is in the chapter on finding elders. And it says, really, all risks are made worse by people who lack the maturity. And what I liked about it was this list of the things that we need: to have a strong sense of their best self, have the maturity to protect others from themselves, see the world with the eyes of heaven, and grow joyful and peaceful maturity in their part of the human ecosystem. And I felt like that was a good summary of just one thing for each piece of the maturity.
Good. Thank you, Barbara. Well, I'm going to ask Dr. Welder to expound on that. Why did you say that the infants shouldn't be in small groups? But I know you want to talk to some other things that she spoke as well, so I'll give you the floor, sir.
Yeah, well, infants who don't know who they are do need individual attention. She adds that to her groups, and so, groups aren't the place to go and find that one-on-one attention. That says this is exactly you, and what you get when you put infants in a group is these things. Well, that doesn't quite fit me. Well, that doesn't quite fit me. That doesn't quite fit me, and unless you take care of that on the side, they just sort of feel like they were in a washing machine. But Barbara being, the elderly mother type, it can do both at once. My being more the elderly father type, I'm not sure if I could do both at once, but mothers have that capacity. And I think one of the things I like about, particularly appreciate, and those of you who've looked at the book will know that Barbara was an ongoing illustration for chapter after chapter, where she did what elders do, and that is be transparent, honor, about her own weaknesses and strengths and limitations, and the relationships that she was in and how she grew through them. And she's also been the one who, at the same time pushes me to write different things and get things done and, move from just thinking about something to make something happen. And so I think it's very interesting. I think, actually even call Barbara an elder, because the Christian tradition has tended to make elders an office in a church as opposed to a kind of maturity. And what I would say about that is, if you want to collect, select, that's the word I want. You want to select a church electrician. Here would be the characteristics that you would say they should be this, all the things that would show that they were a good electrician would not be the things that you'd put in the list. You'd assume they were an electrician, and then you'd ask, is that electrician a Christian that you would want to include? I think elders sort of the same thing. In the days when Scripture was written, somebody was an elder, and then among the elders, you'd look for the Christian characteristics. Now we just think that those Christian characteristics are the only ones we're looking for, and so if we picked electricians that way, we would say, well, have you raised your children to follow the Lord? Well, that doesn't mean you know how to do the wiring. And so really it's, the chance to say that in the Greek text, the same word is used for the men and the women as elders. And it's usually translated older women when it's referring to women. But a community needs the older women and men to be these models and encouragers of how to have better relationships. And, there's special kind of gifting that comes with each one. And so we're not talking about how to get church officers at this point. We're talking about how do you have a community in which everyone is growing into maturity with the kind of encouragement that both men and women have that's unique and special to be added to that mix. And so, of course, Barbara, you and I would both say we're not really fully elders because, we don't have marriage partners that would sort of provide the other half of the tree. But even within that limitation, there's a lot that we can still bring to the community.
And there is a lot that both of you bring to the community, including Bishop Bill. So, guys, thank you. Thank you so much for that part. I'm going to shift a little bit here and invite some of our other reviewers. What we did, ladies and gentlemen, is that we just offered anyone who read the book to write a review on Amazon. And from those reviews, we selected some to actually be on the panel with us today. So I'll be introducing them to you. Now, I have to say this, we have a Jim here already, and I'll introduce another Jim, then I have two Brents. And it's like, okay, so this is the Jim and Brent show today. But I want to invite, first of all, let me read this one. This one is a review that was from Quebec. And I had to translate it, had to have it translated into English for me to read it. But it was just a little short one that just says this book is like a substantial meal that you want to reread as soon as it's finished. But the three books help us understand maturity to develop grace for others and for ourselves. And that I really like that part of it. But let's get to our next reviewer. And I want to invite Brent Stromwall to the discussion. There he is. Thank you, Brent. Good. Lord bless you. Lord bless you. Your review, let me just kind of get a little bit into your review, then I'm going to give you the floor for you to interact with any one of the reviewers here about what you read. But your title was Our Society and Community Needs Elders in capital letters, where you talked about seniors are not necessarily elders. That was one of the points you wrote in there. But the root cause of so many social issues is what was provided in this book gave insights into that. And it was the lack of elders. And so I'm just going to give the floor to you, my friend, and welcome. Thank you for being with us, Brent.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here, and I'm honored. Appreciate it. Yeah, the book, it was very difficult for me to dissect and discern what I really wanted to talk about this afternoon. So I've tried to narrow it down to what I think are the top one or two talking points. There's a few things that I would say are a bit thematic for me. One was there was a lot of affirmation as I read this book. I just felt like, Jim, you made some insights, or just, I call them Jimisms. You just make a declaration. It's like, oh my gosh, I don't know if he knows how big that is. But on page 67, for example, when you said elders need a community to call their own where they are recognized, I feel like for most of my adult life, any community I've been in, it just hasn't either recognized, or I haven't felt appreciated, or there's just been a gap. And so that was very affirming for me. In fact, it wasn't up until a couple of years ago when I'm in one of Barbara's groups, and I said to her, I feel like the first time in my adult life I am being recognized and appreciated for who I am and where I am in my maturity. And so that just that statement in the book is just a affirmation. This is a natural thing that elders have. We want to be recognized. It's not, I've kind of felt like I was being too proud of myself, but it's part of where I am. The other thing that kind of in line with that stood out to me was you said elders do not work alone and need other elders who have the skills that they lack. And that was on page 78. And later on in the book, towards the end, you said, where do people who don't have people find a people? And I'm thinking, where do elders who don't have elders find elders? Thankfully, I get to interact with Barbara on a regular basis, at least once a week, right, Barbara? Maybe even more frequently sometimes. But gosh, and she and I talked about this a few weeks ago. I said, wow, how awesome would it be if we could create a community of elders to just support that? So I'm curious, Jim or anyone, have you seen this happen? And is it helpful?
Well, I haven't seen it happen. I've been looking for it. It's but again, the general lack of recognition of the need for, and even what is an elder in the American communities and churches has made it rather hard to even find them being valued. But I would add to your comments about needing recognition from a community. Every time I've found people going to look for elders,
Mhm.
the wounded people outside, and they had to just sort of pick them on their own. They almost inevitably pick predators. But when a community selects an elder and says, we've been watching you long enough to know who you are, and we can affirm this about you, the people who are vulnerable get protected from the predators who would love to be nothing better than have titles and
Right.
roam around their community. So I think it's good for everybody when a community does it. And, the whole thing that you don't take a complaint against an elder without two witnesses, it doesn't work if everyone can be self-declared elder. This only works because the community says, yeah, we know you really well enough that this seems really out of line with everything we've observed about you for the last 50 years.
Yeah.
And without that protection, elders just can't do what they need to do.
Right. Yeah. And that was another thing that stood out to me. It was in chapter 10, it's just titled Finding Elders. He almost scared me. Like
Well,
there's a big risk in operating as an elder, and it just I want to slowly, develop into that.
yeah, that's especially when we need other elders because, originally you start out with a lot of vision and enthusiasm and not enough sense of all the things that can go wrong along this path. And to be able to go forward but not make unnecessary mistakes, we need that other and somewhat lacking cluster of elders. I've had to sort of gather my own from all around the world in different ways, and so that's it's hard to do.
Right. I would like to ask one more question if I could. Can I keep going, Marlene? Thank you. I'm going to paraphrase a few pages that you have. I think it's chapter 7, the quiet touch.
Quieting touch, yes.
A quieting touch.
Right out of Zephaniah chapter 4. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I'm going to paraphrase something, and my takeaway from a couple of pages in there, 101 to 103. Church communities with low joy are unaware that maturity is an issue for the church to resolve.
Mm-hmm.
Thankfully, my wife and I are part of a church, and have been for the past, I'm going to say 5 or 6 years, that recognizes relational maturity, and have actually read the other half of church.
Mm-hmm.
They're dabbling with some things and experimenting. And they've actually, I now have an opportunity to meet with the pastors and I'm going to say train them or teach them something. So I'm curious from everyone on the panel, what do you think would be a great first step, if anything?
Well, let me defer to the bishop who is always trying to train pastors to see if you have an answer for what you think is the first step.
Well, there's a little bit of a conundrum about which you need first. That you have elders who can call the community, or the community is looking for elders. They want to have that. It's a chicken and the egg thing. Which one comes first? And I think what I've come to on that is you can start either way. You can start with a hungry community who starts looking at resources and getting an idea of who are the kind of people that we need to look for, what characteristics do they have, who among us do we know where we see these kind of positive characteristics, and we could begin doing some experimenting to see. Brent, we've been watching you, been listening to the things you say, and we've been particularly impressed with the way that you have handled injustice and suffering well. And we'd like to posit that in this community, we see you really starting to function as an elder. I'd like to get your input on that. How do you feel about that? And is this something that we could have some more conversation about and pursue? And then, of course, a simple thing would be ship everybody involved up to Colorado to spend time with Jim.
Yeah. Great.
Yeah. And the true elders will almost always defer and say they're not quite qualified to do this sort of thing. The people are too eager to jump on the bandwagon and say, "Oh
Yeah.
yeah, I'm the answer to your prayers."
Yeah, Jim, could
you
that
know,
be?
keeping-
Yeah, would it be fair to say that that's maybe in the beginning? Because eventually, I think you're gonna a genuine elder is going to get to the place where they can say, "Well, no, this is a function of eldership. That is not."
No, I'm talking about the time of the call when you're calling somebody into it. It's
Right.
yeah. hmm
Well, I'm
And that's part of the transparency that's growing in elders. We are well aware of our limitations, and that's part of our qualifications, and you just don't know that early on.
I'm on the practical side. He probably knows what I would say, and I'd say I'd start with relational circuits. I'd start with some brain science and some what to do with conflict, all the everyday stuff, which is probably, I mean, that's kind of where you're coming from anyway in your business.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would like to help. I would like to make it resonate for them as quickly as possible so they can see things in themselves and recognize, oh, if there's hope for us to address this, let's address this.
And Brent, just alluding to the question you asked earlier about where do elders find other elders? And I was just reminded of a community of young people, and there was one couple that were elders, and her community is the one who recommended, I want you to find Marlene, talk to Marlene. And so the community recognizes I have an elder who needs more than what I have. I'm going to find another elder. Let's keep our eyes open for other elders and referring them so that I'm not just kind of being greedy. I'm keeping this person myself, but recognizing they have a need to be with other elders. And that was very beneficial to just sit with this other person. And of course, they were just through the roof to have someone that was closer to their level of maturity. And so the community gets to do that for each other.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Guys, thank you, thank you, thank you. We're gonna get some few more people into the conversation. And so here, what I like about this next person who's joining us is that his mother has been feeding this to him for years. And so now he's taking it in, and he's walking more into this maturity, this elder maturity. So Jim Moon, welcome, 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 sir. Thank you so much for joining us.
It's a real joy to be here, no pun intended. It's an honor. Yeah.
He found out that he was in the book, and so that's why he even read.
Yeah. I was motivated. Yeah. Mom,
Yeah, that should do it.
Yeah. Thank you. Dr. Wilder, it's a pleasure to meet you virtually one day.
Yes.
Thank you for your ministry to my mom so much.
Having written about you, it's nice to see who you are.
I'm a real person. Yeah.
Yeah. That's one of the things we like about you.
Yeah. Thanks.
This book kind of explains some of the things that you've actually learned and started to walk in. Is that correct? Why don't you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, it's been really refreshing, and I really related to what Brent said about how it was affirming. I don't traffic in Life Model Works language. I'm a Presbyterian Church in America teaching elder. That's my role and my job. And I serve in a local church, and I run another ministry coaching church planters and pastors. But a lot of what I read was just dawned on me like, okay, this is what an elder means, and realizing sort of reluctantly, because my mom's an elder, that I am an elder now too, and so are my siblings and my wife and I, and the role that we're playing in our local church, the role that I play as a church planter coach and helping people in the U.S. and in other countries to work through the struggles of being a pastor or church planter. It's just been really super helpful to me. So thanks, Mom, for trying to get me to read the books, and I finally read one. So there you go. I've read more than one now.
Good.
Well, we try to give a different language for things that, as Christians growing up, we sort of, after a while, think we understand this. And so if you say it a little bit differently, it makes us rethink points.
Yeah.
But then the flip side of it is you go back and wonder, is it really orthodox? Because this is language I'm not used to. And so it's kind of fun for me to have somebody who comes from the more orthodox side of things and say, this new language fits with the things I've been observing, using my usual lenses, and it makes a nice blend, I think.
I think so too. It's been very helpful to articulate things that I've thought but had not had language to put together. And I'm implementing it right away. I just absorb things and adapt them into conversations as I'm going. So, but I really wanted to ask a question or two of you all. I know probably what my mom's going to say, but I'd love to hear your thoughts specifically for the younger pastors. And there's so many of them. You guys mentioned this. One of the previous people mentioned that pastors are young now. And when I was growing up, pastors were older, it seemed anyway. They're having church authority through various different denominations really early. So what should we be saying, those guys like me who are elders in other churches, what should we be encouraging them to do within our denominational structures and limitations?
I was very interested. The Presbyterian Seminary in Mexico City invited me down to talk about it simply because they were having so many young people put into sort of elder positions, and it wasn't going well. There's the family burnout on one side, and then there were the malfunctions that were way too common. And so it is an important discussion. But if you think about Paul talking to the younger pastors that he had under him, those are where we read all about elders. Paul knew what an elder was, and he gave the characteristics, and he said to them, don't let anyone limit your teaching and preaching, but go find some elders and appoint them, make them official. And so the problem is in the denomination where I'm ordained, as soon as I was ordained, my official title was elder, and so it sort of felt like I'm supposed to be able to do all these elder things just because I have the title, and that doesn't work. So to say, here's the characteristics of an elder, and really that's much of what my point was in the book. Here's the characteristics of an elder, and now go find some. And, you think about Paul, the people he's appointing as elders, most of them were pagans going back a little bit. They didn't grow up in the church. They developed a lot of their maturity before they became Christians because, the Christianity was very new to town. And so, if you need to, go convert some people who have got elder maturity and teach them how to be Christians, but don't put on the young pastor the burdens that are too heavy for him, or you'll be very sorry, come 5 to 15 years. And, you'll find your kids like, there's no joy in this. I don't want to be part of this faith. And what could be worse, than that? And then there's other kinds of breakdowns. But, I think Paul's original wisdom makes sense to me.
That's great.
And Jim, I think
Looking at people who, go ahead.
I was just thinking about you do see these younger pastors already, they've been assigned, they're in these positions. And so that's a great encouragement to elders is to at least attune to where they are. Say, son, you've taken on a big position here. This attuning that we talk about a lot in Life Model Works of, that's a big position you've taken on. And I'm here. Somebody needs to say, I'm here for you, because you're going to need somebody.
I'll just tell you one quick story about a men's retreat I did, and about a third of the way through, when we're looking at this maturity stuff, the pastor jumped up. He turned to two of the older men in the church. He said, "You take over and run the rest of this retreat. I realize now how my family's gotten hurt because I've tried to been an elder. I'm going home to deal with them and confess where I am and seek healing." And he left the retreat and went home. So part of this is also letting the younger people know, you know, you'll really be pushed to be an elder too soon. And there's some of us that don't want that to happen. And, you know, the expectations that maybe you were given, growing up are unrealistic for you right now.
That's really helpful, insightful. Well, I'll put that to work tonight and tomorrow.
Yeah. You'll have lots of opportunities.
I have lots of opportunity. God's placed us in a church full of lots of young pastors and lots of young people, and it's a delight to worship with them and to put these skills that you're describing to work. And I'll be praying for more elders, and well, I guess we have to pray for more children and adults and then elders, don't we?
Yeah, in terms of growing things, one of the things that your mother and other people have said about the churches that you're a part of is that they are strongly involved in building joy and peace and Hesed kind of attached relationships with each other, and looking at God's sight. What does God see in us and others that we haven't seen yet? And those really are the key ingredients that are there. You know, just because you are following God and, you know, hadn't read any of our books at that point, you just were led into this by the Spirit.
Yeah, he's faithful. I'm grateful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And Bishop Bill, you had something you wanted to say earlier?
Yeah, I was going to say when we begin looking at people to see who are elder candidates or who is exhibiting the characteristics of eldership, there are a lot of skills that are present there, but there are two sort of qualifying ways of identifying eldership early, and that is one is, how do people deal with suffering? Do they suffer well? Because certainly when they begin to function as an elder in the community, a part of that vocation is going to be suffering, because the church will give plenty of opportunities for people to suffer. The other one has to do around the issue of status. Do they understand that the role of elder should not be thought of in terms of elevation of status, and identifying people that use status in an unhealthy way? Remember the brothers talking with Jesus, and even their mother saying, "Hey, let my boys be one on the right and one on the left, because we're in this for the status. That's our ticket." And that's a terrible way of doing it. That the communities need to understand that status is intrinsic, that comes with the value that is on our lives, because we have been created by God, we're loved by him, and that Jesus established our worth by willing to pay everything in order to redeem us. So we have kind of a level playing ground in terms of status, but the church doesn't have a very good track record in applying that. People tend to, that Philippians chapter 2, that although he was in the form of God, he did not count his equality with God as something to be clung to be grasped, but instead emptied himself. And it's in his emptying of himself and choosing to go low that he has the capacity then to bring us high. So suffering and status are two really key elements to look at. How do they deal with being praised and getting accolades? How do they deal with attention? Are they able to speak truth without relying on office to do it? When I was first made bishop, I had what I thought at the time was a horrible situation where I was given the responsibility for a bunch of churches, but I didn't have any articulated authority to function in that structure. So I had to sell ideas to people and say, look, here's what's possible. Let's look at pursuing this. We can be called to life together. But it's so tempting to want to lean on the office in order to leverage a decision moving forward, but it's not a healthy way to go.
Yeah.
I'll just say one little thing. Thinking about your church in particular, where you said that pastors are young, if you just teach them the maturity stages, period, start them out there so that they can begin to see if they are even into the adult stage, and we need to bring healing in there, not just the information and the evaluation. And it's a long, slow process to move through any of the stages, but it might help them to be able to avoid the burnout if they've even got a concept of the maturity stages.
Yes. Thank you, Barbara. Well, we want to bring our next Brent on. We have another Brent. Jim, thank you so very much. I'll get you back on here in just a minute. But let's hear Brent before we're almost at the top of the hour here. Brent Neff, where are you, my dear friend? Come on in, and I'll start reading your review. Is he still there with us?
Sure.
Okay, Brent, turn your camera on. Let's see.
Working on it. Says the host has stopped it.
Okay, I'll let her take care of that in the background while I just kind of tell them
Sure.
about your review, and she'll get that straightened out for you. But he was just talking about seniors will find thorough teaching on why and how to continue maturing and become an elder who can bring joy and wholeness to their communities. I like that part. But you also mentioned the fact that we have a lot of books on child development, on marriage and family, but this enlightened volume is aimed at seniors, which is so needed that we can continue to grow. So thank you, Brent, and I'm going to give you the floor for a little bit. And what were your impressions as you read the book? Any questions that you have for Dr. Wilder and the team?
Great. Well, I really appreciate this opportunity. The book was incredible, kind of a growth process for me. As I read through it, there were so many questions that came up. The book just triggered so many questions in my mind. And if I just kept reading, the book would answer those questions as I went. So many times you see what we need to do without the how we can get there. And this book has it all. And you guys today, you guys are so good to understand how this all falls together, the stages of development, helping people be healthy as children and parents and as they mature. Really that gives me so much hope to have a tool here to help people mature along the way. And maybe we'll have a little bit better chance of having a bunch of elders around at the end of that process, a little bit more of a head start, hopefully, than what we have now. Like the other Brent, one of my real concerns was building capacity for myself. Page 56 regarding capacity, it was also talking about what the bishop just happened on here about it's not about a position or a label or power, but understanding that we all need to grow our capacity. And the examples of Barbara taking the steps to do that, the things that she did to heal and grow and move through the stages, very encouraging to me to know that if we go to work and we work at it and we follow this plan, that we may graduate to elder and be able to help others do the same. So it was really encouraging to me there. But I was hoping that you guys would offer some of your kind of best key advice on building capacity for an individual that's kind of just moving into this elder role.
Well, I'll just start by saying the good news, of course, is the prefrontal cortex keeps the capacity to grow across your lifespan. So no matter where you are, you can still grow capacity. I've seen even people who are starting to get into dementia still grow some capacity, though, of course, who wants to wait that long to do it? But how about you, Barbara? You're the practical one. What would you do first for growing capacity? Always good to have a teacher on board, you know.
Well, I wasn't prepared for that question. I was thinking of keeping your health, eating well, sleeping, exercising, having somebody to talk to that you can vent with, and somebody, like Jim says, somebody above you and somebody below you. And a lot of times we don't have the one above us.
Right.
So to have somebody, even if the person's not another elder, but they have enough maturity, they can handle your pain or your upset or whatever's going on, to have somebody to talk to, not necessarily a counselor. And then being able to say no, take on more than you can, being sure that you're in a place where there's joy, because especially if you live alone, you've got to have somewhere to be getting your joy bucket filled up. So,
right.
One of the
That's
things
really
that
good stuff. Jim, it encourages me to think that my brain might still be growing.
Yeah, one of the things that we've discovered that where this thing takes off is when someone takes like one of these practices or one of the books, often is a book study, finds two people that they know and have somewhat of a relationship, said, let's do this together, let's work on it together. That cluster of a threesome seems to be extremely good at being a place where you can practice and grow. And the secret of growing seems to be being able to share when I just ran out of capacity. People who try to do too much rather than grow hurt themselves. And so if you have a group of people and you say, well, I'll let you know when I've just exhausted my capacity. We'll rest together and we'll try it again. It gets you the idea you're doing reps together of whatever you're doing, joy or dealing with emotions and stuff like that. But, it seems really possible for most people to find two people that'll practice with them. And if you do that, your capacity is going to start increasing.
Got it.
The Thrive Today folks, Chris and Jen Corsi, have some real good skills that they share. And one of them is what they call a 4+ story. And that's talking about the four layers, the pathway of information going through the relational right hemisphere side. And then the plus is the cognitive list making, naming function in the left prefrontal cortex. That when a person with given a relational skill or that has capacity shares with others how they have applied the principles in order to make it through, the effect that it has with other people is a new neural pathway gets constructed. And the people that didn't have that skill now have the capacity to begin to develop it. I love Jim's thing about the three. Of course, a cord of 3 strands is not easily broken. Many other examples. The Trinity is one of the primary pictures of the kingdom and community in the kingdom. But in that in that context, today, Jim may have a particular skill to share and can do that with that 4+ modeling. Another day, he may need some encouragement from somebody else in that triplet to help build capacity. Capacity is fascinating in that we have a certain amount of capacity, but when we are relationally connected with other people in a healthy way, we actually can impute more capacity to them so that they are able to do more than they were able to do yesterday. We do better when we're together.
Right.
Well, good.
Yeah.
Well,
The book was so full of good stuff. It's just, we could stay here all day.
Well, let's all go to Jim's house again, the invitation for Colorado, get on the plane. And so, Dr. Wild, I'm gonna throw this one last question that came in, and that's, sorry guys, it's gonna be the only one we'll take. But do you think prayer and fasting will grow capacity? I know it improves clarity for me.
Um, well, in one respect, it does, and that is it's actually helpful in taming our inner predator by teaching the predator it doesn't have to eat raw all the time. And so it grows our capacity to deal with that aspect of ourselves. But most of capacity has to be an active workout. You have to be doing something that makes you exert energy. And so what I find for most people is at some point, unless you have someone downstream from you that really depends on you to, help them nurture their life along and do something, we don't actually push ourselves to that extra little, I've got to do this because someone needs it from me. And so I think for many people, having somebody who you're feeding actually grows your capacity better than learning to fast. Now, if you have that tendency to, munch on others, you should practice your fasting first before you feed any sheep. But that's where that balance comes for. That'd be my short answer to a very interesting question.
Yes, good. Thank you, sir. And I'm going to invite all of my panelists back on as we close out. Brent and Jim, two Jims, two Brents. Once I have my two Jims, my two Brent, I know I've got a full house. All right, guys, every one of you, thank you, thank you, thank you so very much. This is it's incredible that we're this generation for these three books for us, that it helps to close the gap of what's missing in the church, and these are elders. And so we just highly recommend, guys. She's going to put the link in the chat for the books. For the first one is Growing Me, Becoming a Child. That was the first webinar that we did, and that's found on YouTube. Then the Growing We the People, and then Growing Us. I'm sorry, Growing Us, and then Growing We the People. But you can find all three of those books on Amazon. And I love what was suggested. Take one of the books and find two other people who will read the book with you, but not just reading it, stopping to practice and process and walk with each other. That will be incredible. So Lord bless you guys as we're finishing. The next thing we have up for us at Life Model Works is our Transform Conference. Will be in Denver, April 10th through the 12th. And it's all about church hurt, hope for church hurt. And so we've got some exciting topics. You can find all of that on our website, and it's lining up beautifully. So hopefully we get to see a lot of you there. But as we close today, I've asked Bishop Bill if he will just pray for us, because this is such a need in the church for elder maturity. And a lot of us on the call, that's what we want. We're striving for that. And we want to sit so beautifully in that position. So thank you, Bishop Bill. If you'll just pray us out, and we'll be closing the seminar.
You bet. Let's pray. Father, we thank you for the gift that this day is, and how wonderful and encouraging it is to hear the voices and see the faces of other people who share a passion for earned maturity and for growing in relationship with you and with the community. We ask that anything that was not born of your truth, your kingdom truth, Lord, let's just let that fall to the floor. But the things that were life-giving, let those things find fertile soil in our lives. We can all grow more, and we ask that you would help us with that. We give you thanks for all of the time and the effort, the work that has gone into producing this trilogy of books, and then in gathering these 3 webinars. We pray, Lord, that you would multiply the fruit, that you would receive our offering, Lord, like the fish and bread from the small boy that fed so many. We pray that people's lives would be touched and that they would be satisfied deeply in their soul to receive the things that you have for each one of us. Send us now, Father, in the name of your Son, Jesus, for it's in his name that we pray. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Wow. Well, let me see your smiling faces. Thank you for being with us, guys. And for all of our others, people who are with us today, you might want to click on the link for the Amazon before we close the video today. I'll give you a moment to do that. But again, thank you guys so very much for joining us. And let's go finish reading and underlining and highlighting and sharing with other people. Okay? Lord bless you guys. See you transform.